This week on Hour of Deliverance.
Before Jesus faced the reality of his ministry, he spent time in fasting and prayers. Do unusual to receive unusual. Do unusual to break stronghold. A brief topic I titled The Necessity of Fasting and Prayers. The necessity of fasting and prayers. The necessity, somebody said the necessity of fasting and prayers. On the journey of life, you must be a man of fasting and prayers. We must be dedicated to fasting and prayers for us to get to our destination, for us to fulfill our purpose here on earth. Every child of God that want to make it in this life, every child of God that have decided to make it in this life, on the journey of life, you must be dedicated to fasting and prayers. The necessity of fasting and prayers. Why do we fast? Why do we fast? What are the benefits of fasting? What are the benefits of fasting? What does fasting do in the life of the children of God? What does fasting do in the life of children of God? What is fasting? Why do we fast? What do we derive? What do we derive from fasting and prayer? What do we benefit through fasting and prayers? The necessity of fasting and prayers. Hear me, child of God. Every child of God that is struggling to fast and pray may struggle to get to his destination. My Bible told me in the book of Matthew chapter 4 that Jesus Christ, the Son of the living God, before he started anything, before Jesus went into his ministry, before Jesus faced the reality of his ministry, he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. Before Jesus could do anything, before he could do anything, before Jesus began his ministry, the Bible says Jesus fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. After Jesus finished 40 days and 40 nights, the Bible said he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to face the reality. Hear me, child of God. Before you can face the oppositions of this life, before you can face the challenges of this life, you must equip yourself. You must equip yourself spiritually. You must prepare yourself spiritually. You must fortify yourself spiritually. You must be ready spiritually, because the Bible says, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against rulers of darkness of this age. These people, you cannot fight them in the flesh. That takes me to the number one point of the necessity of deliverance. Number one reasons we fast is to subdue the flesh. Number one reason we fast is to subdue the flesh. The Bible says that God is a spirit, and as many that worship him must worship him in truth and in spirit. As many that worship God, must worship him in truth and in spirit. So one of the reasons why that we fast is to subdue the flesh, for the spirit to be active, for the spirit to be effective. Am I talking to somebody here this morning? So that is one of the reasons why we fast. We fast. The Bible says in the flesh you cannot please God. In the flesh you cannot do the will of God. In the flesh God cannot hear you. In the flesh you cannot communicate to God. That's the reason why you need to fast, to subdue the flesh, for the spirits to be on top. Paul said in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 9 verse number 27, for I discipline my body and bring it under subjection subjection. I discipline my body. Paul began to say in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 9 verse number 27, for I discipline my body and bring it under subjection. I discipline my body. Hear me, child of God. Until you learn how to discipline your body, until you learn how to discipline your body, you may not fulfill your purpose here on earth. You must discipline your body through fasting and prayer. You must crucify the lust. Someone said the lust of the flesh. Say it again. Come on, say it with all your heart right now. Because you know what I'm talking about. Don't pretend as if you don't know what I'm saying. We crucify, we put to death the works of the flesh, which is your enemy, which is the destroyer, the destroyer of your life. That is the works of the flesh, the lust of the flesh. The works of the flesh. In the flesh, you cannot please God. In the flesh, you cannot do the will of God. In the flesh, you will do contrary to the will of God. We subdue the flesh through fasting and prayers. Fornication, lust, seducing spirits, name them. Carnality. We subdue them through fasting. Jesus could not do anything. Jesus could not do anything until he fasted. He fasted. The Bible said when he had fasted for 40 days and 40 nights, he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by who? In other words, he has prepared himself first. How many of you know that Jesus put on flesh? He put on flesh. He came down and he put on flesh like a cloth. He put on flesh like a cloth. In other words, when you hit him, it will pain him also. When you slap him, he will feel it as you and I do feel it. So before Jesus faced the reality of his ministry, he fasted and prayed. Hear me. Before you can face the challenges of this life and succeed, you must be a man of fasting and prayer. You must be a prayerful man. You must be a person that dedicated yourself into fasting. Most of you are rushing into the year without spending time with God. Before you meet with the devil, spend time with who? God.